This 28-year-old unemployed young man woke up to find himself transported back 10 years in time. By leveraging his foreknowledge of the future, he not only joined the globally renowned Platinum Generation team, but also married the cute girl he once secretly admired, ultimately overturning his failed life. The man's name is Kyoya Hashiba. Due to his passion for light novels and anime, he chose to work at a gaming company after graduating from university. Unexpectedly, the company turned out to be exploitative, demanding daily overtime before the boss ultimately absconded with the funds. Thus, at age 28, he tragically became unemployed and could only return to his hometown as an unemployed recluse. Years ago, Kyoya was accepted by 2 universities. One was Unaka Arts College's Film and Media Department, where his admired Platinum Generation team studied. The other was an economics university, ordinary but offering stability. Kyoya chose the latter. Now, having experienced everything, he felt regret. Had he chosen Unaka Arts College back then, might his life have been different? Unfortunately, there's no cure for regret in this world. Kyoya steeled himself to seek employment, but without exception, every attempt ended in failure. On his way home, he saw a woman standing on an overpass and mistakenly thought she was attempting suicide. Without hesitation, he rushed over. After clearing up the misunderstanding, Kyoya learned the woman was simply troubled by company matters. Her project was about to begin, but the staff had abandoned it, leaving her desperate to find employees capable of handling multiple roles. Silently, Kyoya raised his hand, offering to give it a try. Just like that, he unexpectedly landed a job. The woman from yesterday was Eiko Kawasagawa, head of the company's second development department and Kyoya's direct superior. Currently, the department was responsible for a new game planned by the Platinum Generation team, but disorganization due to understaffing left materials in chaos. Thus, Eiko tasked Kyoya with sorting them out. As a former star employee at an exploitative company, Kyoya had been trained into an all-around asset. Not only could he organize materials, but he could even edit a movie on the spot if needed. Witnessing Kyoya's formidable work capabilities, Eiko exclaimed she had struck gold. However, the good times were short-lived. The board decided to terminate the project, dissolving the production team. Kyoya's work contract was not renewed, forcing him back home as an unemployed recluse once again. He couldn't help but doubt his own competence and grew increasingly regretful about his past university choice. When Kyoya next woke up, he found his sister wearing a high school uniform, noticed many light novels missing from his bookshelf, and discovered his phone had turned into an old model. Checking the calendar, he realized he had truly returned to 10 years ago. Rather than figuring out how it happened, he resolved to cherish this second chance. This time, Kyoya decisively chose Unaka Arts College, but he did not live in the dormitory. Instead, he rented a room off campus to share with others. After unpacking items delivered by the moving company, Kyoya collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep. However, when he woke up the next day, he discovered a girl lying beside him, startling him immensely. Strangely, the girl seemed unfazed, even taking a sip from the yogurt he had been drinking, before slipping and knocking him down. The other 2 housemates, hearing the commotion, rushed upstairs and opened the door to witness this scene. Kyoya flusteredly explained it was all a misunderstanding, but judging by their expressions, they didn't believe him. Later, the 4 gathered in the living room for self-introductions. The blonde-haired girl was named Nanako Kogure, appearing gal-type. The black-haired boy was Tsurayuki Rokuanji, who seemed inexplicably disdainful of his own surname. The blue-haired girl was Aki Shino, bearing a masculine-sounding name, but being undeniably cute. Like Kyoya, they were all freshmen in the Film and Media Department of Unaka Arts College. The next day, the 4 attended the new student orientation at the school. The teaching assistant leading the session was named Kano. Upon taking the podium, she posed a question. Last year, 135 students graduated. Guess how many secured their ideal positions? Nanako, called upon, hesitantly guessed 40. Kano retorted that if only it were so, in reality, merely 8 had achieved their dream jobs, though this already exceeded previous years. Entertainment-oriented fields like film and media, she noted, become necessities only after basic livelihoods are secured. Thus, in Kano's view, every student choosing this major was a fool. Despite this, she still offered them encouragement. Kyoya agreed with her statement. The industry was inherently fiercely competitive, with only a small fraction achieving fame, a fact he knew well from his future experience. As Kyoya stood to leave, he noticed a girl had dropped something. He quickly picked it up and returned it to her. To his surprise, The girl turned out to be his future superior, Aiko. It turned out she had also been a student at Unaka Arts College. 2 weeks later, classes officially began. Instead of diving straight into filmmaking, students first observed senior students' filming sets to learn various aspects of film production. However, Kyoya was taken aback by the significant gap between this curriculum and his secondary education. Despite possessing 10 years of experience, certain concepts still eluded him. Yet classmate Aiko demonstrated remarkably extensive theoretical knowledge, even possessing the ability to guide senior students. Witnessing this, Kyoya dared not slack off. Observing his 3 housemates, either engrossed in their phones or visibly distracted, he felt confident that diligence would allow him to surpass all his peers. Just then, the teacher called upon Tsurayuki to answer a question. Kyoya assumed he had been asleep and wouldn't know the question, but to his astonishment, Tsurayuki flawlessly answered the question about script writing. Kyoya was instantly dumbfounded, realizing that his decade of industry experience felt virtually useless. No amount of mediocre experience could match someone else's expertise. After class, Tsurayuki humbly stated he had merely repeated something he'd seen before, but everyone still regarded him as exceptional. This prompted Kyoya to recognize a crucial truth. He had assumed his 10 years of experience would naturally make him superior to his peers. Yet experience alone could not bridge the gap in knowledge or innate talent. If he wanted to succeed, he would need to work even harder. At that moment, classmate Genkiru approached and invited the two to check out clubs. Upon arriving, Kyoya and Aki hadn't decided which club to join when senior students passing by took them to an orientation party. Both enjoyed themselves immensely. It wasn't until late at night, after Aki fell asleep, that Kyoya carried her home on his back. On the way, Aki remarked that Kyoya seemed too reserved, as if he was bottling something up inside. Under her repeated urging, Kyoya finally voiced his worries. Everyone at this university possessed a special talent, but he himself had nothing. Seeing Tsurayuki's performance only made him feel more inadequate. But Aki disagreed. She pointed out that Kyoya excelled at household chores, something most people couldn't manage well. Everyone acquires knowledge at their own pace, and different people possess different skills. Aki's words reinvigorated Kyoya. Later, upon returning home, Aki went to her room to sleep, while Kyoya stayed in the living room watching television. Before sleeping, he noticed a backpack on the floor and prepared to return it to Aki. Unintentionally, he witnessed her drawing. It turned out Aki was the future key animator for the Platinum Generation team, and she had already found her life's direction. Kyoya also resolved to find his own path. The 28-year-old unemployed man returning from the future to his university days, living with 3 future industry giants, forced into daily academic involution while suffering persecution at home. Such a life was truly unbearable. That day, teaching assistant Kano assigned freshmen to shoot a 3-minute short film themed on time in groups of 4. Living together, Kyoya's foursome naturally formed a team. Roles were allocated based on specialties. Aki handled technical support. Nanako managed performance. Tsurayuki, skilled in writing, took charge of the script, while Kyoya served as producer. Crafting a coherent story within 3 minutes proved difficult, and initially, the 4 had no ideas. They could only submit their group list first. While working a part-time job off campus, Kyoya unexpectedly discovered Nanako worked at the same convenience store. He asked why she attended Unaka Arts College. Nanako replied she was tired of her hometown and came to the big city to find herself. Her words resonated with Kyoya. Back when he was 28 and unemployed, sitting on a station platform watching snow drift down from the sky, he too had longed to discover the meaning of his existence.
Hold still. This can goes up here.
Huh? Whoa, Nanako! Good thing I'm still 28 mentally. Otherwise, I'd probably be losing my mind right now.
After finishing his part-time job, Kyoya returned to the shared house and woke Aki, who had fallen asleep at the table. He asked why she wanted to attend Unaka Arts College. Aki explained she had never excelled at anything since childhood, even frequently missing stops on trains, which was why she came to Unaka Arts College to acquire a specialized skill. Suddenly, Kyoya had a flash of inspiration, recalling how everyone had experienced life's uncertainties at train platforms. He decided to film a 3-minute short about a girl's entire life set against the backdrop of a train station. Everyone thought the idea was excellent. Tsurayuki even produced the script in just 30 minutes, having previously considered writing a station-themed script. But Kyoya wanted to know why Tsurayuki had such inspiration, as he had seen similar plots in the future. Briefly unsettled, he wondered if he had stolen Tsurayuki's future creation. Tsurayuki, however, dismissed it as coincidence, even believing Kyoya had innate talent in this area and could become his kindred spirit. So the two made a pact. They would astonish their teacher with their work. Yet reality often diverges from ideals. When Tsurayuki finally crafted his best script draft, Kyoya rejected it for exceeding the time limit. Kyoya bluntly stated that even an excellent script would fail to earn credits if it ran overtime. Tsurayuki had assumed Kyoya, like himself, cared more about art than grades, but discovered the opposite was true. Disappointed, he left. On their way back, Kyoya and the other two encountered senior students from the Art Research Club performing street art. Facing their club recruitment pitch, Aki and Nanako eagerly agreed to join, while Kyoya remained hesitant. Later, while scouting locations at the station, Kyoya ran into Eiko and learned both groups had coincidentally chosen the same setting. Eiko arrogantly declared her group would definitely rank first. Though Kyoya wanted to retort, upon reflection he found himself lacking confidence. After returning to school, Kyoya submitted the application permit to teaching assistant Kano. Kano knew about their conflict and tossed Kyoya a script that could have won awards but ultimately failed. She explained that even the best written script would be worthless if poorly executed, and the producer's role was to coordinate all aspects to present the best possible film to the audience. Kyoya had a sudden realization and thanked teacher Kano before rushing home to apologize to Tsurayuki. Seeing his sincerity, Tsurayuki forgave him, and together they revised a high-quality script meeting all requirements before the deadline. However, the four had mistakenly borrowed DSLR cameras completely unsuitable for shooting short films. Recalling past failures from his previous life, Kyoya refused to give up easily.
We are not out of options. We will fix this, damn it!
He called the senior from the Art Research Club, offering to join the club in exchange for learning stop-motion photography. Dividing tasks among teammates and refining details meticulously, Kyoya spent an entire night organizing materials. He barely finished editing the final cut and submitted it just before the deadline. Though uncertain about the outcome, this remained their best solution. After Eiko's group's project finished screening, their retro-style silent film received applause from most of the audience. Soon it was Kyoya's group's turn. The four instantly tensed up. Both teams had filmed at train stations, inevitably inviting comparison. Kyoya's group braced for mockery, but unexpectedly received enthusiastic applause. Even Eiko, ranked first in class, acknowledged their skill. Due to equipment limitations, Kyoya had to shoot 100 photos per scene and composite them. Nanako performed strictly according to the script, with dialogue appearing as on-screen text. During the climax, they inserted a low-resolution reshoot sequence. Thus emerged this extremely niche film, through unconventional narrative and cinematography. Such immense effort coupled with an excellent storyline naturally earned widespread praise. After the screening, Eiko's group secured first place, while Kyoya's group ranked third in class. Kyoya believed their film would have turned out better if shot according to the original plan, leaving him inevitably disappointed. Just as he prepared to console his teammates, he witnessed their overwhelming excitement. All three expressed admiration for Kyoya's quick thinking under pressure, vowing to work harder and surpass him next time. Consequently, everyone began striving relentlessly. Meanwhile, Eiko confronted her sister Kano, questioning why Kyoya's group wasn't awarded first place despite their superior short film. Kano explained that while the concept was strong, its execution felt disjointed, and anyone could see it was a makeshift solution after borrowing incorrect equipment. Nevertheless, Kano commended Kyoya's problem-solving abilities and instructed Eiko to collaborate with his group on future projects. However, Eiko harbored special feelings toward Kyoya. At noon after finishing their part-time shifts, Nanako invited Kyoya to karaoke. Her completely off-key rendition made him question if he was listening to Hell's song, yet he reluctantly praised it against his conscience. Nanako, fully aware of her limitations, acknowledged that, despite her grandmother being a folk singer, she possessed no such talent. Even after repeated practice, she couldn't master musical intervals. Still, she felt comfortable singing freely in front of Kyoya and asked him to accompany her practice. Kyoya agreed, suggesting she post singing videos online for feedback, since online content would dominate the future. Though embarrassed, Nanako accepted after consideration. Later, the three attended a club gathering. Hearing the self-introductions of senior club members revealed each possessed distinct talents. No wonder Kyoya's 10 years of experience still couldn't match their pace. After parting ways with Nanako, Kyoya and Aki headed toward the shared house. Along the way, Aki brought up drawing, admitting she had always lacked confidence in it, which was why she hadn't dared to choose fine arts when applying for university. Seeing how exceptionally skilled Kyoya was now made her feel even less confident in her own abilities, and she was beginning to consider giving up drawing altogether. However, Kyoya urged her not to quit so easily, expressing that he had always liked her artwork and would continue to like it from now into the future.
Speaking from the future, and now.
His words made Aki very happy, and she stated she would strive to make him her goal, aiming to become someone capable of painting the world he wanted to see. Soon after, Kyoya's group and Eiko's group went to the seaside for a shoot. The assignment progressed smoothly at first, but during filming, Eiko and Tsurayuki developed an irreconcilable conflict. Even Kyoya stepping in to mediate failed to calm either of them down.
Wait a sec, I'm not through talking to you.
On the way back, Eiko suddenly had a question. Why could Kyoya borrow equipment for 3 days and 2 nights, when as freshmen they were only permitted 1 day? To answer her query, Kyoya immediately took her away to help him with a part-time job. It turned out he had subleased the filming equipment from seniors in exchange for helping them shoot footage. Since this violated school rules, Kyoya asked Eiko to keep it confidential. Unexpectedly, however, their actions were discovered by Senior Kaiko. Though she agreed to keep their secret, Kyoya now owed her a favor. Before long, it was the day of the screening. Kyoya and his group's work received high praise from classmates, but Eiko felt something was off. It wasn't until the next group's work played that everyone realized the acting was too superficial and soulless. Even though they ultimately secured first place in class, there were numerous skeptical voices from the audience. Nanako approached teaching assistant Kano to inquire why their group was chosen for first place when another group had better acting. Kano explained that film is a comprehensive art form where acting alone isn't decisive. She then asked Nanako if she understood her own shortcomings, specifically that her teammates invested deeply while she herself showed no emotional commitment. These words deeply discouraged Nanako. Throughout the celebratory banquet, she forced her smiles. At everyone's strong urging, Nanako sang a song. Though off-key, her high notes were astonishing. Just as she grew embarrassed by the praise, Eiko suddenly pointed out that Nanako clearly wanted to be a singer rather than an actress, which was why her performance lacked seriousness and her emotions remained superficial. Eiko accused Nanako of disguising her true self, stating that if she genuinely loved singing, she should have studied it properly instead of entering the film department while avoiding music, completely wasting her musical talent. Completely exposed by Eiko, Nanako became furious and stormed out of the private room in anger. Though aware she'd spoken carelessly, Eiko refused to apologize and stated that if Nanako objected, she could withdraw from their current group. The more Nanako reflected on this, the more distressed she became, isolating herself in her room and refusing to communicate with others. Kyoya grew concerned about her condition and resolved to help restore her confidence. Eiko had already prepared a group withdrawal request, though Kyoya absolutely opposed it. Eiko now recognized her earlier words had gone too far. She envied how the others' remarkable talent was being wasted. Upon arriving at the club, Kyoya unexpectedly learned from a senior about the Unaka Arts College Festival. Following previous year's practice, their club would borrow a classroom for an art exhibition. However, due to the unreliable club president, he had already submitted a proposal for a maid cafe to the school without prior discussion. Their club only had a few female members, insufficient to meet the required number. To make matters worse, the president insisted on finding a lowly to be the center position in the cafe. Kyoya thought of Senior Keiko from before. Just as he asked if they knew her, Keiko herself appeared beside him. Keiko came to collect the favor Kyoya owed her. Her game development club lacked a production member with strong professional skills. Having heard about Kyoya's impressive abilities, she wanted to invite him to collaborate on making a game. It would be untrue to say Kyoya wasn't tempted, but he had more pressing matters at hand and thus had to politely decline. Before leaving, Senior Keiko gave Kyoya samples of their game club's work. After reviewing them later, Kyoya couldn't help but admire these big shots. Though merely club projects, they were as polished as commercial products, even featuring theme songs by professional singers. This reminded him of his time working at a shady company, where limited funds forced them to hire singers with inadequate skills, relying heavily on post-production audio editing. It was through this experience that Kyoya developed his skills as an audio engineer. At this thought, Kyoya had a sudden inspiration. He could use his audio engineering skills to properly tune the audio of Nanako singing and let her listen. The beautiful singing voice astonished Nanako, who questioned if it was truly her own. Kyoya confirmed it was and praised her voice for holding immense potential. Nanako opened her door and stepped out. She had always disliked her singing because of the pitch problems, which was why she wanted to utilize her voice by striving to become an actress. But now she realized she shouldn't betray her own talent, nor disappoint Kyoya's expectations for her. Nanako regained her spirits and made a pact with Kyoya to work hard together. Later, with the help of a senior, Nanako undertook systematic training. Though still filled with uncertainty, she wanted to convey her singing to more people. The day of the campus festival soon arrived. When Kyoya entered the classroom, Nanako and Aki were already dressed in maid outfits. Senior Keiko was also among them, stating that now Kyoya owed her 2 favors. Since the club's 2 senior members were executive committee members for the festival stage, various miscellaneous tasks for the cafe fell to the all-capable Kyoya. Through everyone's joint efforts, the cafe thrived, achieving its sales target in just 2 days. However, this left them thoroughly exhausted. Seeing this, Kyoya felt it inappropriate to ask everyone to keep working. He said he would talk properly with the seniors to try and arrange an early closing on the final day, allowing everyone to enjoy the festival. The next day, Eiko came to the cafe, hoping to use the opportunity to apologize to Nanako. However, Kyoya indicated it wasn't necessary, as it was thanks to Eiko's blunt words that Nanako had found the courage to pursue her singing dream again. After the cafe closed, Kyoya and Aki went to enjoy the festival. While viewing the art department's painting exhibition, Kyoya noticed an oil painting with a style strikingly similar to Aki's. Just as he bent down to look at the artist information, he felt dizzy and collapsed to the ground. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying with his head on a girl's lap. Alone together in the room, the atmosphere suddenly turned ambiguous. Then, a call from a senior shattered the ambiguous mood instantly. It turned out that while planning the stage performances, they had invited a not-yet-famous singer for the finale. Now that the singer's popularity had skyrocketed and she had secured other commitments, she canceled their campus festival appearance. As everyone frowned in worry, Keiko approached and reminded them this was Unaka Arts College. Finding someone who wanted to sing wouldn't be hard. Kyoya snapped back to reality and asked the seniors if they could give this opportunity to Nanako. He intended to offer her a chance to perform, but unexpectedly, Nanako was seized by stage fright and immediately fled the scene. Kyoya's decade of extra experience beyond his peers told him opportunities always arise from the impossible, as he had tasted too much regret himself and didn't want Nanako to experience the same. Though Nanako understood this was an opportunity, she still feared failure. If the audience disliked her singing, it would mean all her efforts were utterly rejected, and she would lose the courage to sing ever again. Kyoya confidently asserted this wouldn't happen. He then pulled out his laptop and showed her a recently posted video where views had already surpassed 10,000 in just one day. Given that, why fear a mere 100 or so people under the stage? Comforted by Kyoya's words, Nanako regained her composure. Meanwhile, Aki and Tsurayuki were performing acrobatics on stage to buy time, but some audience members had already started leaving. Fortunately, Kyoya brought Nanako promptly. When the singer took the stage, the audience cheered, only to fall completely silent upon seeing who it was.
I hope you enjoy the finale as we celebrate another school festival!
Nanako quickly entered her peak form. Her powerful, penetrating vocals instantly warmed up the venue. Kyoya, standing below the stage, wasn't surprised at all. Though Nanako was still inexperienced, she was undoubtedly the future lead singer of the Platinum Generation team. The concert concluded successfully. Eager to share her excitement, Nanako immediately sought out Kyoya, only to learn he had left early. However, when she went to find him, she unexpectedly witnessed Aki kissing Kyoya. She froze on the spot. Afterwards, every time she saw them being affectionate, a pang of jealousy rose within her, though she was unaware of it herself. During lunch, the three mentioned Tsurayuki's recent absence from school due to busy part-time work. He assured them not to worry, saying he would return to regular classes next week. The very next day, Aki noticed he looked unwell and physically tried to stop him from going to work. Tsurayuki attempted to tough it out but unexpectedly collapsed unconscious moments later. After leaving the hospital, Kyoya followed him, repeatedly urging him to rest more during this period. Yet Tsurayuki poo-pooed it, insisting he absolutely had to earn enough for his university tuition by May. Initially, his family wanted him to follow in his father's footsteps and become a doctor, but unwilling, he ran away from home to Unaka Arts College. Though his dreams seemed bright back then, he was now barely hanging on. Hearing Tsurayuki express a desire to give up, Kyoya promised to help find a solution, stating that friends should help each other out. Kyoya planned to lead everyone in creating a visual novel game combining text and illustrations, presented in a Kamishibai-style picture show. This way, the required specialized knowledge could be minimized. Moreover, the strengths of all 4 members perfectly matched the production needs for this game. However, like indie music, doujin games struggle to sell without the creator's reputation. So Kyoya approached Senior Keiko, intending to have the game sold through her club upon completion. Keiko agreed but set an exchange condition. Kyoya had to accompany her shopping. Later, Kyoya researched future trends and decided on the school romance genre. Hearing this, Tsurayuki panicked completely. Having never had a girlfriend, how could he possibly know how to write about school romance? But Kyoya reassured him that a competent screenwriter could create something out of nothing. Kyoya then had Nanako and Aki try out similar games. However, after encountering some unspecified plot, Nanako stormed out angrily, calling Kyoya a pervert. Only Aki found it somewhat interesting. Later, teaching assistant Kano also heard about the project and asked Kyoya about its progress. Kyoya smiled weakly. While the other 3 would become industry giants in the future, they were currently inexperienced novices. Everything relied on Kyoya, the all-rounder forged in demanding workplaces. After several sleepless nights, all 4 were drowsy in clay modeling class. Kyoya forced himself to stay alert, watching over his partners, terrified they might accidentally smash their heads into the clay. Eiko noticed their unusual state and approached Kyoya for an explanation. Learning the truth, she even helped Kyoya share some of the workload. The next day, Aki suddenly mentioned seeing a strange person in the parking lot yesterday. Upon hearing it was a short-haired girl wearing a beret, Tsurayuki instantly tensed up. He grabbed his things intending to hide somewhere, but upon opening the door, was tackled to the ground by that very girl. Noticing the stares from Kyoya and the others, the girl stood up and introduced herself. She turned out to be Tsurayuki's fiancé, Sayuri. Watching his roommate and the girl display affection, Kyoya was filled with envy. Aki, noticing his wistful thoughts, immediately picked up a piece of meat and fed it to him. Not to be outdone, Nanako followed suit. This sudden love rivalry scene left Kyoya deeply conflicted. Apparently, even excessive happiness could be a first-world problem. Sayuri and Tsurayuki were childhood friends. Unexpectedly, their parents arranged their marriage since childhood. However, Tsurayuki currently had no desire to marry and didn't want to hurt her by refusing. Winter break arrived in the blink of an eye as game development progressed smoothly. Due to Kyoya's earlier suggestions, Tsurayuki completely overhauled the script, finally settling on the final version. Meanwhile, Nanako was troubled by the game's theme song. Though she had written several melodies, they wouldn't come together into a complete song. Examining them, Kyoya assured her it was no problem and could be fixed with music software. Excited, Nanako hugged him from behind. Even though Nanako later acted completely nonchalant about it, Kyoya felt something wasn't quite right. Not only with Nanako or Aki individually, but their close gestures during these moments also left him feeling profoundly flustered. Christmas Eve arrived in a flash. Kyoya was accompanying Aki on a shopping trip. While waiting at a pedestrian crossing for the traffic light, Aki tentatively asked Kyoya,
Still, you're okay with it being me?
Huh?
After all, it's Christmas Eve, you know?
On New Year's Day, everyone visited the shrine together to pray for their game's commercial success. Nanako even gave up inviting Kyoya out to focus on creating good music. When winter break ended and they returned to school, their game was already half finished, scheduled for release on the 29th of April. Though progress was smooth, time remained tight. Kyoya secretly vowed not to repeat his decade-old failure. This time, he would complete his life's work. While working part-time at the convenience store that day, Nanako suddenly asked Kyoya about his relationship with Aki. Blushing for unknown reasons, Kyoya hastily escaped using restocking as an excuse. Unexpectedly, Nanako pursued him, pressing close from behind to confess. Startled, Kyoya dropped the drinks in his hands. When he tried urging her to calm down, Nanako declared she wouldn't back down, clearly determined to compete with Aki. Unable to comprehend women's hearts, Kyoya sought advice from Eiko. Though calling him dumb as a log, she thoughtfully suggested that to avoid disrupting work progress, he should pretend ignorance and temporarily avoid being alone with either girl. Returning home, Kyoya was discussing the script with Tsurayuki when his fiancée Sayuri hugged him, insisting Tsurayuki needed rest. This sparked a fierce argument between them, ending in a bitter parting. Witnessing this, Kyoya had no choice but to tell Tsurayuki to set aside work temporarily, assuring he'd handle the rest. Seeing his teammates' reliability, Tsurayuki felt utterly incompetent. The following evening after school, Kyoya was taken aside by Sayuri. Because he and Tsurayuki were so close, Sayuri suspected they might be gay. Only after hearing Kyoya's explanation was she finally relieved. However, she felt Kyoya interfered too much. If Tsurayuki simply went home to inherit the family business, he could have a stable and bright future. Yet, under their influence, he had chosen an uncertain path, which made her, as his fiancée, deeply uneasy. Kyoya understood Sayuri's perspective, but emphasized that everyone must choose their own path. Since Tsurayuki wanted to be a writer, his friends could only offer their full support. Moved by Kyoya's sincerity, Sayuri entrusted Kyoya and the team with ensuring Tsurayuki's happiness before leaving by car. However, considering the time constraints, Kyoya had to further compress assets, like using similar compositions, and asked Tsurayuki to write based on his condensed outline. Initially, Tsurayuki was reluctant, feeling that blindly following Kyoya's instructions defeated the purpose of his own work. But Kyoya persuaded him by citing the urgent time pressure. Afterwards, Kyoya took Nanako to the recording studio to capture character voices. Eiko was also recruited by Kyoya to help create the game's promotional video. When Kyoya returned home that evening, Aki mentioned having thought of a brilliant idea for an additional ending scene. Though Kyoya also liked it, he declined her suggestion considering time constraints. Soon, the final development deadline arrived. The four worked overnight inspecting the game visuals, discovering not only typos but also unresolved issues with character art display. With everyone extremely irritable, Kyoya could only offer verbal reassurance. Eiko and Senior Keiko came to assist, enabling them to barely complete the game on time. Kyoya handed it to Keiko to deliver to the manufacturing plant. The finished game copies arrived quickly. Though Kyoya initially worried about poor sales, it unexpectedly received widespread praise upon release. Returning home, the four celebrated properly. Everyone emphasized how much they owed to Kyoya, stating they could have achieved nothing without him. Kyoya simply took this as praise, completely missing the sincerity in their words. Soon after, Kyoya distributed the earnings. However, Tsurayuki suddenly called him outside, declaring he didn't want his share and was preparing to drop out of school and return home. Kyoya couldn't understand why. Now that tuition was solved, he would choose to leave. Tsurayuki explained his former arrogance. Believing he was unmatched, he had confidently enrolled in Unaka Arts College. But meeting Kyoya made him realize his ordinariness. Whenever problems arose and others were stumped, only Kyoya found solutions instantly. This made him feel defeated, as if he could do nothing without Kyoya. Nonetheless, Tsurayuki didn't plan to abandon writing. He had already chosen the pen name Kawagoe Kyoichi, the very name of the genius writer from the Platinum Generation team.
You know, as in Kyoya's number one?
After Tsurayuki left, heavy rain began to fall. Keiko appeared before Kyoya, questioning why things had turned out this way. It was only then that Kyoya realized. He who had returned to the past 10 years earlier, constantly aimed to achieve success with the Platinum Generation and help them overcome difficulties. Yet he forgot that even without him, Aki and the others were destined to become exceptional talents in the future. Now, because of his intervention, Tsurayuki's future had been altered.
You know, I wonder what would happen in the future at this rate.
Kyoya opened his eyes again and found himself 11 years later. He was now married to Aki and had a daughter named Maki, but he had no memory of the intervening years. After breakfast, Kyoya opened his computer to investigate his current situation. He confirmed he had graduated from Unaka Arts College and was currently employed at a game company. He then checked his phone and called Eiko, learning they worked at the same company. She also asked him to arrive early the next day for urgent matters. The following day, Kyoya bid farewell to his wife and daughter and went to work. Tasked by Eiko, he went to press the collaborating illustrator Saikawa for project progress. They had initially partnered with Saikawa because of her high popularity, which could significantly boost the game's visibility. However, Saikawa stated she currently had nothing she wanted to draw anymore. Kyoya then noticed a completed illustration on her desk and praised it as exceptionally well done. Saikawa immediately brightened, explaining it was drawn in the style of an artist she admired most when first learning to draw. Encouraged by Kyoya, Saikawa regained her spirits instantly, saying she now felt motivated to continue drawing. Kyoya was very happy for her. Yet, upon returning home, he discovered Aki had given up drawing many years ago. Kyoya was shocked and asked her why she had quit. only to receive the same answer as Saikawa. She currently had nothing she wanted to draw anymore. The next day during lunch with Aiko, Kyoya also sensed something was wrong. In the original timeline, Aiko had been the head of the game development department at a top game company, but now she was merely a team leader. Kyoya later searched online for news about the other two companions and found Nanako no longer sang, and Tsurayuki had given up writing to run an agency. Kyoya suddenly realized he had intended to reset his life and rewrite it into his desired future, but he never expected to end up taking away the dreams of the Platinum generation. Kyoya returned home reeking of alcohol and repeatedly apologized while holding Aki. However, Aki did not blame him. After Tsurayuki left, they continued developing games, but regardless of whether her drawings were good or bad, Kyoya always praised her. This instilled panic in Aki's heart, and gradually she no longer knew what to draw. Still, Aki did not blame Kyoya, as he had only done what he believed was right.
But it's okay now.
A month later, Kyoya had become familiar with his current work. His department was the 3rd Entertainment Division, responsible for social game development. Among them, Aiko was the highest performing Team A leader, and also served as head of the 3rd Entertainment Division. Kyoya was leader of Team B, tasked with producing games with stable revenue. During a weekend break, Maki became angry because her father wouldn't play with her and threw her teddy bear. Seeing this, Aki picked up the bear and sternly instructed her daughter to apologize, explaining that the gods valued created items and damaging them would cause sorrow. Kyoya felt these words carried her distinctive style. It was a pity Aki no longer drew. Kyoya arrived at work the next day as the boss announced the company would go public next fiscal year. Therefore, the high-stakes game under development had to be completed on schedule and at full scale before then. However, issues arose with the illustrator. Saikawa still hadn't submitted her work to date. At this point, Morishita, Aiko's subordinate, requested Kyoya accompany him for another visit. Upon arriving at Saikawa's apartment, they found her playing cosplay as soon as the door opened. When asked, Saikawa explained this was an attempt to spark inspiration, though it proved ineffective. On their return, Morishita mentioned Saikawa had said she could overcome her creative block and regain inspiration if she found the right trigger. Kyoya recalled the artist Saikawa had admired years ago, guessing this might serve as that trigger. Regrettably, even 1 month before the game's launch, Saikawa still failed to deliver. All tasks under Team A fell behind schedule, and the boss's demand to use the company's proprietary engine created such hellish difficulty that colleagues from other teams worried for Aiko. At lunch, Kyoya invited Aiko out and learned this game was outsourced by another company. The client had imposed numerous demands, and since the contract was already signed when Aiko took charge, revisions were impossible. Problems now piled up relentlessly, either delay the release or lower production standards, yet the boss refused both options. Aiko felt ready to slack off. After the break, Kyoya confronted the boss, warning that continuing this path would guarantee programming errors. The best solution was to delay launch and refine the details. The boss understood this logic, but time was critical. With the IPO looming, results were mandatory beforehand. He then reminded Kyoya that Aiko was the project lead and advised against unsolicited interference. Kyoya thought of the altered futures of the 3 Platinum Generation members due to his earlier meddling and resolved to follow the boss's directive. 1 month later, the game launched as scheduled but suffered frequent errors and server crashes, forcing the development team to work overnight fixing bugs. Despite their efforts, the game's reputation could not be salvaged. While Kyoya was home with his child, Morishita called to report the game's voice actor had posted on social media about consecutively drawing rare characters, sparking player outrage over perceived backdoor dealings. Inadequate crisis management exacerbated the situation, forcing the game into indefinite maintenance shutdown. Compounding the problems, the company's proprietary engine was found to have critical flaws. Aiko planned to address the root cause, but the boss attempted superficial fixes. Kyoya considered intervening but hesitated upon remembering Tsurayuki. Back at his desk, Kyoya found Nanako had posted a new video on social media. Though she had previously considered blaming Kyoya for encouraging her singing career, she ultimately decided she could not deny his past support and chose to sing again. This moment brought consolation to his guilt-ridden heart.
We'll figure something out, damn it!
First, the game engine was replaced. Without affecting Team B, Kyoya reallocated Team B's budget to Team A, enabling the acquisition of an industry-leading, highly stable, yet expensive game engine. This approach resolved the engine issues while ensuring Team A's budget wasn't exceeded. Next, Kyoya appointed Morishita as the manager of the official social media account, instructing her to apologize to the voice actor and letting the actor decide whether to continue voicing new characters. By demonstrating full sincerity, the company made it difficult for the voice actor to press charges further. Additionally, Kyoya allowed ample time for programmers to adjust system details and conduct checks, while arranging tenfold compensation for players. The boss, overwhelmed by these measures, demanded an explanation from Kyoya, who responded that given the game's terrible reputation, retaining players and rebuilding trust required acknowledging past mistakes and demonstrating genuine sincerity. After persuading the boss, Kyoya visited Saikawa and presented her with game illustrations from his university days, reigniting her passion for drawing. With issues resolved one by one, Kyoya planned to invite Aiko to lunch, but learned from Morishita that Aiko had booked a flight to another city. Kyoya sank into self-blame, believing his earlier assistance had overshadowed Aiko as the superior and caused her resignation. Fortunately, Aiko's flight was delayed unexpectedly. When Aiko asked why he worried about her, Kyoya confessed his fear. He always thought he was helping others, only to realize later that those he helped lost their creative drive, making everyone miserable, proving his very existence was a mistake. Hearing this, Aiko hit him hard with her handbag. In her view, their situations resulted from their own choices, yet Kyoya constantly blamed himself despite having done nothing wrong.
All I can tell you is this. You haven't done a single thing wrong.
Aiko stated that if she could return to the past, she would try everything to support him. Moreover, she pointed out Kyoya's earlier statement wasn't entirely accurate. After all, he had successfully reignited Saikawa's creative passion. Watching Aiko's flight ascend into the sky, Kyoya lamented his desire to return to the past. Perhaps in response to this longing, Keiko reappeared before him. Keiko asked if he truly wished to go back. After all, he now had a fulfilling family and successful career. Returning to the past meant abandoning all this. Could he really bear to let it go? Kyoya clarified he sought not personal happiness, but rather to share struggles alongside everyone. Still, before traveling back, he wanted to bid farewell to Aki. Upon returning home, Kyoya discovered Aki's creative passion had reignited after seeing Saikawa's artwork in a game. She told him she wanted to paint countless scenes, capturing everything from nature to architecture with her brush. After spending the evening discussing art with Aki, Kyoya ate breakfast, bid his family goodbye, and met Keiko. She remarked that while Kyoya often viewed his abilities as cheating, he never exploited information gaps for personal gain. He purely used his strength to help others overcome challenges. Of course, Kyoya was no savior, merely an interloper disrupting future trajectories. Thus, Kyoya returned to the past. This time, he would not interfere with others' lives but simply pursue his own dreams with creative fervor. Meanwhile, Nanako received a commission email from a Dojin game circle requesting she compose and sing the theme song. Lacking confidence, she considered asking Kyoya to join her. However, for her future growth, Kyoya decided to let Nanako undertake it alone. Elsewhere, Aki's situation grew severe. She had lost all interest in drawing since the game's completion. As Kyoya pondered where to find a catalyst, he encountered the yet unknown Saikawa on the street. Using Saikawa's work as inspiration, he rekindled Aki's creative spark. Finally, Kyoya located Tsurayuki and persuaded him to return to school. This time, no one's future would be altered.